The empire was vast and full of wonder. In the center of the capital stood the royal palace, made of shining marble and towers that touched the sky. People from far and wide gathered outside its gates, waiting for the announcement that would change the future of the crown. Whispers moved through the crowd as they spoke about the queen, her beauty, her wisdom, and the strange challenge she had declared. Queen Alira was young, but carried herself with the strength of someone much older. She had ruled with fairness since the day she took the throne after her father passed. Many admired her not only for her golden crown and graceful presence, but for her heart that always chose justice over pride. Yet there was one thing the queen had not yet chosen, and that was a husband. The council of elders often pressed her to marry a wealthy lord or a powerful soldier, but she refused. She wanted no man who came for power or gold. She desired someone who could prove his heart, someone who understood more than strength or riches. For this reason, she stepped onto the balcony one morning and made her voice echo through the city. She lifted a golden box into the air. It was small, no larger than her hands, but carved with strange marks that seemed to glow under the sunlight. The people gasped when they saw it, for they had never witnessed such a thing. The queen spoke with calm strength, telling them that this box could not be opened by force or by greed. It would open only for the one who was worthy. She promised that whoever could unlock it would win her hand in marriage and stand beside her as king. The news spread quickly. From distant villages and great cities, men began to prepare for the challenge. Some were lords with grand titles. Others were warriors with scars from many battles. And some were scholars who believed their knowledge would guide them. Each of them dreamed of standing at the queen's side. In a small town on the edge of the empire lived a quiet young man named Daniel. He worked as an engineer, fixing tools and machines for the people of his village. He was not strong like the soldiers, nor rich like the lords, but he had a mind that loved to solve puzzles and hands that built things with care. His childhood friend Claire often told him that his patience was his greatest gift, though he never believed her. When he heard the queen's words, he laughed at the thought of joining such a challenge. But Claire looked at him with steady eyes. She reminded him of the times he had fixed what others had thrown away, and the nights he stayed awake, studying broken locks, until he made them whole again. She told him that the box might need someone like him, someone who saw more than gold or pride. Daniel thought about her words as the sun set behind the hills. Deep inside, he felt a quiet pull, as if the challenge was not only about the queen, but about finding what he was truly meant for. So with a small bag of tools and a heart full of doubt, he decided to travel to the capital. The road was long and filled with travelers heading the same way. Some men laughed at Daniel when they saw his simple clothes and plain bag. They boasted of their strength, their armies, or their wisdom. Daniel stayed silent, walking step by step, listening more than speaking. Claire's voice stayed in his mind, telling him not to doubt what was inside him. After many days, he reached the shining gates of the capital. The city was alive with music, banners, and voices. The challenge had turned into a festival, where merchants sold bright cloth, spices, and charms they claimed could help open the box. But behind the joy was tension, for every man knew only one could succeed. Daniel walked through the streets feeling both small and hopeful. At last he stood before the great palace. The steps were wide and lined with guards in silver armor. Beyond them, the queen waited in her hall with the golden box resting on a pedestal. Daniel took a deep breath. He was one of many, unnoticed and plain, but something inside told him this journey was only beginning. The queen's eyes moved across the hall, and when they passed over him, he felt as though she could see the doubt and the quiet strength hidden in his heart. The palace hall was filled with voices and footsteps. Long banners hung from the ceiling, each painted with the crest of the crown. In the center stood the golden box on a tall pedestal, shining under the light of many torches. Guards stood around it with sharp eyes, making sure no one broke the rules. The queen sat on her throne, her crown glittering like the morning sun. She watched as men came forward one by one to face the challenge. The first to try was a soldier named Victor. He had broad shoulders and a sword at his side, stepped up proudly, placing both hands on the box. With all his strength, he pulled and pressed, shaking it as if it were an enemy in battle. The box did not move. His face grew red with effort, but nothing happened. The crowd laughed when he gave up, walking away with anger in his eyes. Next came a nobleman named Charles. He wore rings of gold and fine clothes. He bowed deeply to the queen, then took out a set of keys he had brought with him. One after another, he tried them all, whispering about his wealth and status, as if the box would care. Not one key fit. The nobleman frowned, dropping the keys to the floor as he walked away. After him came a scholar named Henry, carried books filled with notes and symbols. He studied the carvings on the box, speaking of old languages and secret codes. He pressed the marks in different ways, certain his knowledge would unlock the mystery. Hours passed, but the box remained closed. With a sigh, he left, holding his books tighter than before. Many others followed, each with their own way. Some used tools, some spoke prayers, some even tried to bribe the guards for help, but none found success. The queen's face stayed calm, though her eyes carried a shadow of sadness. She had hoped someone would understand, but all she saw was pride, greed, or frustration. Daniel stood at the edge of the hall, watching each man fail. He felt small among the grand figures around him. His plain clothes made him look like a servant compared to the silk and armor of the others. Still, he studied every move, every mistake, storing it quietly in his mind. Claire's words came back to him, reminding him not to rush, not to chase glory like the rest. As the days passed, the hall grew more crowded. Men argued among themselves, blaming the queen for giving them an impossible task. Some left the palace angry, others stayed only to boast about what they would do next. The box sat silently through it all, glowing faintly as if it were alive. Daniel walked closer when the hall was empty at night. He stood before the box, staring at the carvings, touched them lightly with his fingers, not to force them, but to feel the way they were shaped. He listened to the soft hum that came from within, a sound so quiet most people never noticed it. The guards watched him, curious. Unlike the others, he did not shout or boast. He simply observed, whispering to himself, testing small ideas without anger. The queen, though seated far away, saw him too. Her gaze lingered, and for a moment her lips curved into the smallest smile. The next morning, a new round of challengers arrived. One of them, a proud general, saw Daniel standing near the box. He laughed loudly, calling him a fool for thinking he had a chance. The crowd joined in, mocking the young man with plain clothes and simple tools. Daniel lowered his eyes but did not move away. He had not come to fight them, only to follow what he felt was right. When his turn finally came, he stepped forward with quiet steps. The hall grew silent, waiting to see him fail. He placed his hands gently on the box, closing his eyes as if he were listening to something deep inside it, did not pull or strike, only traced the lines with care, searching for meaning. The box did not open, but a faint glow shone brighter for a moment before fading again. The crowd gasped. Though it stayed closed, the change was clear to all. Daniel stepped back, unsure of what he had done, but the queen's eyes followed him as he returned to the edge of the hall. The challenge was far from over. Yet for the first time, there was a sense that someone might truly be closer to unlocking the secret. Days turned into weeks inside the grand hall. The golden box remained on its pedestal, silent and shining, as man after man tried to open it. Some pressed with all their strength, some whispered words from old books, some even tried to strike it with metal tools, but the box never gave way. The queen watched with steady eyes, though each failure deepened the quiet sadness in her heart. The crowd that once filled the hall with cheers now grew restless. Many challengers had given up and returned home, angry that their efforts were wasted. Others stayed only to laugh at those who still tried. Tension grew in the palace as guards had to break apart arguments and even fights among the men. Daniel kept to himself, never joining in the noise. He spent his time watching the box from a distance, taking notes in a small notebook he carried. He sketched the carvings, copying the shapes carefully, and tried to see if there was a pattern. His patience made him seem strange to the others, but he did not care. Claire's words echoed in his mind every night, reminding him that strength was not always the answer. Sometimes, when the hall was empty, Daniel walked close to the box and placed his hand on its surface. He felt the faint hum inside it, like the sound of a heartbeat. He did not try to force it open. Instead, he whispered quietly to himself, testing small ideas. He pressed one line, then another, as if the box was a puzzle waiting for gentle hands. The queen noticed his behavior. From her throne she watched as men came and went, but her eyes often returned to Daniel. She saw the way he worked without boasting, the way he studied without seeking glory. While others sought to prove themselves, he seemed to be searching for something deeper. One evening, the palace grew loud with anger. A group of challengers shouted that the test was unfair. They claimed the queen had given them an impossible task, and they demanded she choose a husband by power instead. The hall shook with their voices until the queen rose from her throne. Her voice was calm, but it silenced the room. She reminded them that her word was final, and that the box would choose who was worthy. Many men left that night, their pride broken. Daniel stayed. Though doubts still sat in his heart, he felt there was meaning in the queen's words. He remembered how his mother once told him that patience could open doors no key could touch. So he continued to study while others grew weary and left. One night when most had gone, Daniel sat near the pedestal. The moonlight poured in through the high windows, making the carvings on the box glow softly. He placed his hand on it again and closed his eyes. Thought not of riches or power, but of the journey that had brought him there. Of Claire's faith in him, and of the queen who had waited so long for someone to understand her challenge. The box gave a faint pulse under his hand, stronger than before. He opened his eyes in surprise, pulling his hand back quickly. The glow faded again, but he knew he had felt it. The next morning when Daniel entered the hall, he felt the stares of the other men. Whispers followed him. Some had seen the glow the night before, and rumors spread quickly. Many laughed, saying it was only a trick of the moonlight. Others grew angry, jealous that a simple young man with plain clothes had come closer than them. A general stepped forward and blocked Daniel's path. His voice was sharp as he told him to leave before he embarrassed himself further. Daniel stayed silent, moving past him without a word. Though fear stirred inside him, he refused to turn back. The queen saw the exchange. Her eyes softened, and though she said nothing, a thought grew in her mind. Perhaps the quiet man who stood against mockery with patience was the one she had been waiting for. Still, the box remained locked, its secret hidden. But the air in the hall had changed. For the first time since the challenge began, there was hope that someone might truly find the way. The hall grew quiet as fewer men remained. Many had left the city, their pride broken and their hope gone. Still, the golden box rested on its pedestal, shining softly as if waiting. The queen sat upon her throne with the same calm grace, though her heart carried the weight of disappointment. She had promised to honor her word, yet no one had unlocked the secret. Daniel returned each day, moving quietly among the tall pillars. He did not speak much, and when he did, it was only to the guards or to himself. He spent hours studying the carvings, drawing them again and again, searching for meaning in their lines. The other men watched him with suspicion, whispering that he was wasting his time. Some laughed openly, calling him a dreamer with no chance. But the queen noticed something different. Unlike the others, Daniel did not grow angry or impatient. He did not strike the box or demand answers. He treated it with care, as if it were alive. The queen found herself waiting each day to see what he might try next. One evening the hall was empty except for the guards, the queen, and Daniel. The torches burned low, and shadows stretched across the floor. Daniel stepped closer to the pedestal, his heart beating fast. He placed his hand gently on the box and closed his eyes. This time, he did not think about the crowd or about failure. He thought about his life, about Claire's steady faith in him, and about the queen who had risked her crown for something greater than power. He traced the carvings slowly, pressing them in a gentle order. As he did, the box gave a faint hum, deeper than before. The glow grew brighter, filling the hall with soft light. The guards stiffened, their eyes wide, and the queen leaned forward, her hands gripping the arms of her throne. Then came a sound, soft and sharp, like the turning of a hidden lock. The box shivered under Daniel's touch. With one last press, it clicked open. A rush of golden light filled the hall, brighter than the torches, brighter than the moonlight through the windows. The box opened to reveal a crystal inside, clear as water but glowing with its own fire. The crowd that had gathered near the doors gasped, their voices rising in shock. For weeks they had tried and failed, but the quiet man with plain clothes had done what none of them could. Daniel stepped back, his breath heavy. He looked at his hands as if he could not believe what they had done. The crystals shone, casting his reflection along with the queen's face within its surface. It was as if the light itself declared them joined. The queen rose from her throne. Eyes glistened, and for the first time, her calm mask broke into a smile. She walked down the steps with slow, steady steps, her gown trailing behind her. Standing before Daniel, she spoke so that all could hear. She declared that he had shown what none of the others had. Not force, not pride, not wealth, but patience and heart. The box had answered him because he sought to understand rather than to conquer. The hall erupted in voices. Some shouted in disbelief, others in anger, but many cheered with joy. The guards raised their spears in salute, and the sound of the crystal's hum filled the air. Daniel stood frozen, unsure of what to say. He'd come with no thought of glory, no dream of crowns. Yet here he stood, chosen by the box, chosen by the queen. She reached out her hand. When he took it, the crystal flared even brighter, as if sealing a promise that went beyond words. From that moment, the challenge was ended. Queen had found her answer. And the man who had once been overlooked by all, now stood at the center of the Empire's story. The news of the opened box spread through the city like fire. From the markets to the smallest streets, people spoke of the moment when the quiet young man touched the golden carvings and brought forth the crystal of light. Crowds gathered outside the palace gates, waiting to see the man who had achieved what so many had failed. The empire that had once doubted the challenge now believed it was a test of the heart. Daniel walked through the hall with unsure steps. He felt the weight of many eyes upon him. Some men glared with jealousy, others hung their heads in defeat, but many bowed their heads with respect. He had not expected honor, nor dreamed of standing in such a place, yet now he carried the crystal's light in his memory. The queen stood by his side, her crown shining as she faced her people. She raised her hand, and silence spread through the hall. Her voice was clear as she declared that Daniel had proven himself not through strength or wealth, but through patience, humility, and understanding. She spoke of how the box had answered only to him, because he sought to listen rather than to force. Cheers broke out from the crowd. The sound rolled through the palace and out into the city beyond. The guards struck their spears against the marble floor, a sound of salute and honor. The festival outside grew brighter, filled with music and dancing. Daniel stood quietly, his heart pounding. He was no lord, no general, no scholar. He was an ordinary man who had followed the faith of a friend and the pull of something greater. He thought of Claire, who had believed in him when he did not believe in himself. He knew that without her words he would never have stepped onto this path. The queen turned to him with a gentle smile. She spoke softly so only he could hear, telling him that he had changed not only her fate, but the fate of the kingdom. She told him that the crown was not only a symbol of power, but a burden that needed someone who could carry it with patience and care. Daniel lowered his head, humbled by her words. The days that followed were filled with preparation. The city was decorated with banners, flowers, and lights. Craftsmen built great arches in the streets, and musicians rehearsed songs for the celebration. The people waited eagerly for the union of their queen and the man chosen by the box. Daniel often felt lost in the grandeur. He was not used to fine clothes or grand halls. He missed the quiet of his workshop, the sound of simple tools in his hands. Yet when he looked at the queen, he felt a calm strength. She treated him not as a stranger, but as someone she trusted. On the day of the ceremony, the palace shone brighter than ever. The hall was filled with nobles, soldiers, and common folk alike. The queen walked forward in a gown of silver, her crown resting gently upon her head. Daniel walked beside her, dressed in robes prepared for him, though his eyes remained humble and his steps steady. The crystal from the box was placed between them on the altar. It glowed with a steady light, as if blessing their union. When the vows were spoken, the crystal flared, filling the hall with brilliance. The people cheered, their voices rising to the sky. Claire stood among the crowd, tears in her eyes, smiling with pride. She had always known there was more to Daniel than he believed, and now the whole empire saw it too. From that day forward, the kingdom spoke of the quiet engineer, who became king not by force, but by heart. Songs were sung about the challenge of the box, the queen's wisdom, and the man who unlocked it with patience. Daniel remained the same at his core, never chasing pride or glory. He ruled beside the queen with fairness, listening to the people, guiding with steady hands. Together they brought peace and hope to the empire, proving that true strength lies not in power, but in understanding. The story lived on for generations, told by parents to children, and by travelers across distant lands. It was remembered not only as the Queen's challenge, but as the tale of how a humble man and a wise queen joined their hearts and changed the fate of their world forever.